Welcome to TrulyFit.
Tyler and Katie, thank you so much for joining the TrulyFit Podcast. Why don't you give my listeners and audience a little background on who you both are and what you do in the health and fitness space day to day?
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
You want to share what we do?
Yeah, sure. WeShape is a company that we founded about 2 years ago, and the goal was to do two things. It was to change how people exercise and why people exercise. The how being, instead of giving people, one size fits all approach, how do we create a product that can actually create a workout that is unique to each individual user based on their goals, their capabilities, and ultimately what their body can do, and giving them the right things to help them improve that. And why don't you speak to the why?
Yeah, we used to have a different fitness company that really focused on body transformation and diets and certain max calorie burns and really getting people to focus on the scale. And we had taken thousands of customers through body transformation experiences and really discovered that it wasn't what they thought it was going to be in the end. And that really cultivating a different type of connection with self and focusing more on self-worth created further intrinsic motivation to care for their body rather than using that scale as something that externally motivated them. So we noticed people, one, weren't really emotionally or physically satisfied with their result. And we also noticed that they often just reverted back to old behaviors and patterns. And we hypothesized it was because they were using something outside of them, like the scale or various fitness goals in order to try to create that intrinsic or motivation. And we just found it wasn't working. So we wanted to try something different.
Yeah.
I love that.
The way I think about it is most people are motivated by self-judgment. And we're trying to get rid of that negative self-talk. And we're trying to replace it with, I want to show up for my workouts as an act of self-care, not self-judgment.
Yeah, there's certainly a push for vanity in the community now over overall health, right? People conflate things like strength even and vanity, how you look with the numbers. I coined a term saying health is not in your abs, it's in your labs, right? There's more going on, but there's also a psychological component that people miss because they're always chasing a particular look. They're not really taking time to step back and saying, how do I feel? Is this really what I want to do? And then also from like a long-term perspective, you guys understand because you've done this with clients, but inevitably, looks fade. And, injury prevention, waking up with no aches and pains, waking up, knowing you're healthy is more important than necessarily how you look. So did you look at first to see if there were any apps out there that were doing this and you saw a hole in the market? Was that also part of the reason why?
I wish I could say that we did as much market research around that. It was really more like both of us, I think, came to a place of feeling like this isn't fulfilling. This doesn't feel like we're creating the best product and serving our people as good as we can. And so ultimately, when we sat down and talked about it, Katie really spearheaded a lot more of the brand mission as it relates to, hey, we need to bring awareness to this toxic weight loss culture that we're stuck in, where people are just told to feel lousy about themselves until they reach a certain goal weight or whatever. And then it's changing every decade, the body shape and everything like that. And I came more at it from the fitness perspective, having been a trainer for a long time, and said, how can we build a product that I can give somebody in their iPhone that gives them an experience that's almost like having a personal trainer, but for a fraction of the cost? Because to me, I just don't like the one size fits all approaches. It doesn't make any sense to me because everybody's got different degrees of flexibility and strength and coordination. And we wanted to figure out how to help people through their journey improve all of those, but contextualize for them.
Yeah, we talk about that on this podcast, how there's too many people in the health and fitness industry where they are a hammer and everything's a nail. And instead of just having a large toolbox of skills to use and individualizing programs, they say, no, you have to be keto, you have to be carnivore, you have to lift heavy, you have to only run. And ultimately, we all need different things, not only from a physiological perspective, but from a psychological perspective, right? Because if Katie doesn't like lifting heavy, then she's not going to adhere to a program where all I give her is lifting heavy. Ultimately, she has to adhere to the program to become successful. So walk me through your user experience. I go on an app store today. Steve downloads the app. What's the next steps?
Yep. So we launched the product as a web-based application. So you can't go to the App Store yet, but in a couple months, we're going to have the app live on iOS and Android. That was a decision because we knew there was going to require a lot of iteration from our technical team to get the product experience right. And if you deploy an app and somebody downloads it on day one and they don't refresh it, they're going to have that kind of outdated version in terms of like the experience they're having. So we've been working real hard for the last, 20 months now on just kind of optimizing the user experience and the product experience so we can get the best results for people at the end of the day. But the experience is quite simple, right? Usually somebody will find us on social media. We do a lot of talking about both toxic weight loss culture as well as like, hey, if your arm hurts when you put your hand over your head, here's what might be happening and try this. And then people go, wow, that feels really good. And we say, hey, come try out one of our personalized at-home workouts. And then they come to the website. We take them through a quiz. The reason why we used a quiz in the front end is because we used 26 data points from that quiz to actually customize their first assessment workout, right? These are, for example, how far can you bend to touch your toes? What squat do you think you can do without pain, 10 times, like different variations of different movements, and they can kind of self-select throughout that process. Then when they actually join into the product, we start with an assessment workout. And the assessment workout uses the self-identified data that they did from the quiz to give them exposure to these particular movements. And then they can say, hey, this feels too hard or this feels too easy, and we'll scale the difficulty of those movements up or down for them in real time. And then we kind of build on it, right? So as an example, I allow people to self-identify as, being able to do a certain type of squat. Then when they actually do the squat, they'll be able to adjust it up and down. And then we use the level from that squat to inform, for example, how we might do like the first attempt at a lunge. And then we use the lunge to do a first attempt at a single leg movement, right? So it's just a process of allowing the user to experience the product, self-identify, and using that data to inform the decisions that we're making down the line in their future workouts as well.
Are they watching a video of someone doing this? Is it a picture? Is it a live video? How exactly does that work?
Yeah, it's a follow-along workout. So I like to say that behind the scenes, it's very complicated.
That was the thing I just said, the complicated part. Yeah.
We have like a movement matrix that has thousands of video files with tons of variations of micro movement progressions. From the user experience, it's very easy. You take the quiz and you push play, and then we help you, figure out what you need. So yeah, it's follow-along workouts that basically can just be adjusted in real time. So if you push play and you're like, gosh, I woke up and my shoulder's kind of bothering me, that movement that I'm doing today feels a little bit too hard, you can just interact with the screen and say, scale me down. And then the next round, it'll be the same movement pattern, but just a slightly easier variation of it. So you can kind of go up and down in the workout as needed based on each movement pattern. And I also think it's really important to talk about this idea that in the fitness space, so many of us focus on exercise versus movement. And so one of the things that when we were talking earlier about, looks fade, vanity fades. So even if you're down that path, like eventually you're gonna have a different value system that goes, actually, I just want to be feeling good in my body. I don't want to wake up in pain. And we had really discovered that there's really no industry standard for quality in terms of exercise programs in the market. So for instance, we could all go to personal trainers. Your personal trainer could have a 2-week certification. Mine could be a personal trainer that has extensive education for years. You could go to someone who has a physical therapy degree and be really focusing on your biomechanics and movement patterns. There's no industry standard. All we do in the health and fitness space is say, exercise, that's good. And what we're saying is we need to redefine what quote unquote good means. We need to focus on how the body is intended to move. Every single person on the planet has movement dysfunctions that will eventually lead to a pain or to an injury. And so what we're doing is identifying those dysfunctional movement patterns and giving you an exercise program that helps you move better in your body so that you can have sustainable fitness. Sitting on an exercise bike for 30 years, if you like that, I'm not going to discourage that necessarily, but it likely will not serve your long-term movement pattern. So we're not only again, behind the scenes from the programming and the technology, it's very complicated. The user experience is very easy, push play, but it's important to talk about these things because we have complete misconceptions around what exercise is. Yeah. It's not max calorie burn. It's not PRs. It's movement quality, and that's our foundation of our product.
That's really important too. I want to say this stuff. I'm thinking about this a lot as a trainer. Like, how do you describe this to somebody? Because when you describe it to somebody, they just don't understand what the difference between a squat and a squat is. One being like biomechanically aligned, with good form, activating proper musculature, all the different elements that make it a good quality squat that you can do when you're 100 years old, versus somebody just doing a bunch of squats where their knees are caving in and their back's rounding and they don't have good core pressure and all this other stuff. And so to me, exercise right now, when people hear it, it's energy systems. They're not thinking in terms of movement quality. They're thinking, how many calories can I burn? How much sweat can I get? How high can I get my heart rate? Or how much can I pump my muscles, right? And we're trying to get people to stop thinking like that. We're trying to get people to say, it's not about energy systems. It's about the movement system. It's about when I lift my arm over my head, can I do it pain-free through a full range of motion, right? Am I using the proper musculature to be able to do that? And it's been difficult to figure out how to educate somebody who doesn't have an interest in that on how to do that, but that's been the focus of the product as well, is as you're following along to, it's not just a movement that you're emulating, it's educational snippets that pop up throughout that are poignantly trying to address a specific issue that most people have.
And I like to say, you might not care about it today, but everyone will have to care about it at some point in their life.
That's true.
So you can deal with it later and you can work through that pain, or we can address movement dysfunction now and pair movement dysfunction with exercise. And you can just do it all at once in our product.
Yeah, I like to always relate fitness and finance, and that's how I try to explain it to my clients who otherwise don't know, and say, hey, listen, in long term, we have to be worried about saving money. We have to be worried about having a 401k and a savings account and all of those things. That's sort of like our body runs the same way, right? So like maybe you're a little bit riskier in your stock profiles now, but as you grow older, you have to be less risky. We have to worry about making sure we have money for later on in life. That's the same thing with our body. We have to make sure that the movement patterns are there later on in life. Ball and socket, hips and shoulders, we got to move them around in all directions. We have to make sure we're not just moving in sagittal and frontal. We got to move in transverse. And we teach our clients how to do everything. And I think it's trending a little bit more now, but unfortunately you have, again, the vanity culture is against that, because a lot of the vanity culture is doing the opposite of that, unfortunately. It's just moving in a few planes of motion, and it's about how you look and not how you feel. But I love also how you guys talked about how you can modify up or down. And I don't think any program that I've come across has that, like where you can do that. Now, maybe retroactively, like after the workout, you could reach out to somebody and they'll do that. But mid-workout, I think that's fantastic, because it could be too late, right? If the client's hurt and they go, oh, hey, like that workout that I was doing, like now I tore my rotator cuff. It's like, okay, well now we got to rest for 6 weeks. So the fact that they can feel a slight discomfort and then right away pivot and transition, I think was a genius idea by you guys.
Thank you, Steve. The way we thought about this was really simple. I used to work with clients. I used to do all of the sales and the initial workouts for people who are coming into our group training programs in the past. And it's modeled after that. It's ask a lot of questions. What's your goal? What can you currently do? Look at them move, right? And then we say, okay, try this. How's that feel? And then we adjust it, in real time based on what their feedback is, right? And then during the workout, if you're a trainer and somebody's like, this is too hard, the bad trainers go, suck it up, right? And the good trainers go, okay, pause. What feels hard, right? Where is it feeling uncomfortable? What do you feel working right now? Are we working the right stuff, right? And so, throughout the workouts, that was the key, was like, how do we give the user the same experience as working with somebody, or at least as close as we can get? And so when it came to the product, that's why this was a difficult product to build, and it was so technically heavy. And like Katie said, we have 9,000 video files. And the way it works is like whatever movement's coming up next in your workout, we're buffering multiple options so that the rest interval stays the same, but that person can be like, oh, this was too hard for me. And 10 seconds later, we can play a simpler version of it or a more difficult version of it, right? So that they get that scalability in real time.
And really the future of our product is to have, we actually already have a plan for how we're going to do this, but it's to have the camera of your device give you the feedback and not even allow you to go to the next level until you show that your body's movement pattern is aligned with where to take you to that next level. So right now it's based on user feedback, but in the future it will actually be based on the technology that's looking at your body to make sure that you're doing the proper movement pattern.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. I think explaining to the general public too, I had a funny story. My sister contacted me, and she's in the same space we are, but not in fitness. She's in the nutrition realm. She's like a licensed nutritionist. And she said, I went on a hike on vacation, me, my husband, and two of my friends. And after the hike, my husband's calves hurt, but my glutes hurt, my friend's hip hurt, and my other friend's quads hurt. And she's like, why is that? I had to explain to her. I'm like, well, all of our bodies work differently. Some of you had stronger muscles in one area. Some of you recruit posteriorly better than you do in the anterior front. And there's so many different reasons and mechanisms. And that's why workouts need to be designed individually, right? This was like the perfect analogy. Yeah, 4 people can go on a hike and they can all come back with different muscles being sore. And that's just not talked about enough, how People say, oh, you're doing a squat, you're working your glutes. It's like, well, not for some people. It depends on what they're recruiting and where their feet angle is and their ankle mobility and all these things. So it's great that you guys are sort of tackling this again from a very thorough perspective and not just saying we're going to throw generalized workouts at everybody. But I want to go back to maybe a little bit more technical talk, because I also have a few software companies and apps, and I've also noticed that sometimes the desktop is just a way better version to show things than the app. Like if somebody goes to Skip Wish right now, which is a registry that I own, they can use the app, but it's not going to be as good. Like there's too much content. There's too much like interface where they can interact, where it's always better on the desktop. So is there going to be a point where you guys just try to really push people towards the desktop because it's better? Or are you still thinking like the app is the future because people just love apps?
Well, that's an interesting thing to be thinking about. So Tyler and I do not have a technical background at all. My background is in more developmental psychology and operations, and Tyler's
I can't work an iPhone, so
yeah. And very quickly, when we discovered that we wanted to build this product, we were like, we looked at each other like, oh no, we're two non-technical people trying to do this, but we persevered anyway. We're like, we're gonna make this happen. So we have a chief technology officer who's absolutely incredible. We hired a person who's running our product now, who has lots of product experience, great product rigor, who's been in multiple fitness companies. So we really have a lot of faith and honestly a lot of reliance on their feedback for how this experience will go. But I've been looking. We're actually in the process of building the native app, and so I've been looking at a lot of the mock-ups and PRDs and everything before we push play, and I'm actually pretty impressed with their ability to make this simple for the user experience. So I actually, jury's out, but I have a lot of hope and faith given our current team's skill set and work history that they're going to be able to put something together that's really helpful, really useful.
Do you have a particular demographic you're either aiming for or that you see is clinging to this or that you hope to get on the app? What is your thought about the type of person who's going to be using it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reality of our product is that someone can be coming from physical therapy all the way to professional athlete can use our product. In fact, our next venture is partnering with physical therapy offices to use this as sort of an affordable program that someone can join once they've been discharged from physical therapy. But essentially, at this point, we have a lot of females over 40, and a lot of people who are in pain. They're like, so it's like one cohort is, I've done every diet and exercise plan on the planet, and I'm just sick of feeling like crap about myself, and I just want to go down a different path. And then another cohort is like, I'm in pain, and none of the programs address what I need.
Can't do this. Yeah. And that's like just to highlight the scalability of what Katie's talking about here. When we designed this kind of movement matrix, the goal was at level 1, which is the baseline of all the different movement patterns. I want this movement to be done by somebody who's laying in bed and can't sit up, right? So that's the initial level. Most of this is like tension drills and mobility drills that you're doing from a lying position that eventually graduate to a seated position and then eventually graduate to a standing position and then become movement patterns that people are familiar with, right? But at the end of the day, I wanted somebody who could literally like be in a hospital bed and could still do some of these movements so that they can actually get something. A lot of people, surprisingly, because we also do live coaching calls. That's another aspect of the program, is we didn't want to just have a technical product. We wanted connection with our users. We wanted to see people face to face. We wanted to let them know that they're supported as well. And that community is so dang important in the long term. And when I get on these calls, Steve, it never ceases to amaze me how many people are in so much pain or have so much movement dysfunction that even doing a seated movement pattern that most people would originally think of as very simple is challenging for them, And one of the best parts about the product that we have, I think, is that we're consistently telling people, like, scale it down, go easier. Almost always in a workout, you're being pushed. In our workouts, you're almost always being told, do a little less, build a strong foundation. If we build a strong foundation, then we can take one step forward slowly. If we don't, then people get caught in this cycle. It's too much too fast. It's one step forward, one step back, and you never make any progress, and decades go by and you wonder why. So yeah, the scalability is really tremendous when it comes to the product.
To speak to the other side of that, at the hardest variation of what we offer is really intense. Like
ballistic unilateral movements that are
yeah.
incredibly challenging, require strength, flexibility, balance, coordination, all that stuff.
Yeah, Tyler is the head trainer, and he had to film all of these videos. And that particular week, I remember when you were filming, you would come home and you would take ice baths. I was like, "Are you okay?" Yeah. So yeah, the spectrum of what we can offer is extremely customizable and is really broad.
Yeah, I think it's, but even more important to modify down than modify up. There's a lot of trainers who can make things harder. There's not a lot who can make things easier. And I think that's probably a problem in the industry, is that people don't know the next step down to make it easier. So they force their clients to do the movement because they don't know anything else, right? Their clients like, what do you mean you can't lunge? Well, just do it. You know, if you're in pain, push through it, because they don't understand. It's like, well, you can put a chair next to you, hold the chair, right? Like we'll find different ways to go about this movement pattern. Maybe you're not ready for it from a joint perspective, and we can work into this. But I think there's a problem in the industry, like we talked about. I don't know how to solve it. We talk about this on this podcast all the time, is that there's a very low barrier to entry. And in some senses, that's good because the cream rises to the top. But in a lot of senses, that's bad, because if you have a client who has a bad experience with a trainer, they may never go back into that space. So, I think that I don't know how we solve that problem. So I've talked about this on this podcast before. Maybe you guys could speak to this. As, Tyler, I know you've been in the industry a while. It's like, well, if you put a lot of parameters on it and you make it really difficult also to become a personal trainer, and you have like one organization, then you can't have people like Tyler and Katie who are developing their own thing. So in some senses, you don't want too much regulation, right?
Yeah. This is a great topic, Steve, and thanks for bringing it up. I remember I was an overweight kid with parents who didn't exercise or know anything about nutrition, and I remember when I joined a gym at 13 years old, my dad came with me, and we were like, let's all do it together, right? And I kind of got bit by the bug back then. And my dad went in, got a free personal training session, guy worked him to the bone, he got sore for 7 days, and he never went back, right? Never, ever went back. And I'll never forget that moment, because as I started working with coaches or with clients, I recognized that that's just a common thing. People think that somebody coming in who's 40, 50 years old, who's overweight, who has aches, pains, and injuries, is going to be able to do what they're able to do. And the reality is, most personal trainers are failed athletes, right? At the end of the day, so they actually probably have like incredibly natural gifts that most people don't when it comes to their movement. Some of them do, at least. And at the end of the day, I really despise that. So I'm a fan of an idea meritocracy. I'm a fan of conscious capitalism in a certain sense, and I think that the cream will rise to the top. But I also wish that there was at least some more barriers to entry, or some sort of testing parameters or requirements to make sure that people aren't taking people down a poor road. Because the reality is, when I used to work at a gym, what I would see is this: go on the treadmill for 15 minutes and I'll speed up the treadmill while I'm looking at my text messages or my Instagram, right? And then, okay, let's come over to the machines that lock you into an isolated movement pattern, do 3 sets of 10 on these rounds. And then let's lay you on the ground and like do some core stuff, or like get you some cardio until you feel like exhausted and send you home, right? And the reality is, most people come back to their trainers not because of the quality of the training, but because of their connection with the trainer. And so it's really like, how charismatic are you? How good are you at sales? How good are you at listening? Becomes more important for the success of the trainer than their actual understanding of physiology. But there's another layer to this too, Steve, which I don't know how to solve either, which is like, we can say that someone has to have credentials to be able to do this. But for example, I'm probably not very highly credentialed compared to most people, but I've spent a ton of time doing this. I worked with a lot of really smart people. I've got a good eye for movement. And that's just something that comes to me in a more natural way. You could put 10 physical therapists in a room, and one of them is going to watch a squat and not know how to correct it, even though they have a doctorate in physical therapy. They might know every muscle in the human body, but they might not be able to see what's actually happening in that human movement, right? Which is differentiated from their knowledge of the human body. So there's a lot of layers to this that make it complex. And that's where, when we started this, it was like, how do we do this so well that people use our app instead of using a personal trainer? That's kind of the focus that I've always been kind of.
And along the way, when we were developing the product, and we said we really wanted to focus like with a human being in mind, physically, emotionally, socially. And we had a good friend who has multiple physical therapy clinics, and he is one of the smartest people I know when it comes to human movement patterns. And I thought, if he approves our product, we will set a new standard. And we're actually partnering with him as our test pilot for the physical therapy clinic. So I feel like, yeah, it's difficult to say. It's layered. It's complicated in terms of how we set this standard. We feel that we've done a pretty good job, but I understand that it's complicated, and we don't necessarily have the answer for how to reset this standard in this industry.
Can I say one more thing too that just pops into my mind? One of the things that we did, it was a little bit of an afterthought, but it actually ended up being incredibly useful, is we were thinking about what do we quantify for the user? Because all fitness apps are like calories and like quantity of workouts. And one of the things that we wanted to do was not necessarily encourage somebody to come back more often. So when we do product iterations, it's not focused on how do we get a user to use the product more workouts, more, because that's not always what the user needs, right? In the intake quiz, we ask them questions about, how many times a week do you have availability to work out? How many times a week do you consistently work out? And then we don't just give them what they think they need. We actually scale back to where they're actually at. And if they don't have consistency right now, I'm not going to give you 5 workouts a week. I'm going to give you 2. You know what I mean? I'm going to give you something that's much more palatable, right? And so when we do product iterations, we're focused on, does this help people feel better in their bodies, right? And so part of our process is monthly, we survey our users a bunch of questions, and we created what we call the feel good score. And it's going to give people ranks on how your body feels, how much energy you have, and how much sleep and recovery you have, as well as your self-confidence, right? And so we're kind of measuring these outcomes. And over the course of the first 30 days of somebody actually using our product, we're seeing a 17.9% decrease in aches, pains, and injuries, increase in self-confidence, increase in better quality of sleep, and increase in energy levels. And the plan on the back end is to contextualize this even further. So if somebody comes into our product and they identify as having a particular injury, as we create more contextualization of the product, not only can I give you a shoulder pain program with specific movements at specific levels for you, but I can actually A/B test that outcome for people who are coming in shoulder pain. And I can ask them at the end what the outcome was for them. And so we can actually start saying with data definitively, this sequence of movements and workouts gave a person a better chance at increasing their shoulder mobility, decreasing their pain than other sequences of workouts, which is something that most trainers just don't ever have enough data to be able to do.
Yeah, it looks like you guys really have a wholesome kind of 3-pronged approach. You have the psychology nailed down, where we're not going to overwork people. It's not about how much you come on the app. It's not about being obsessed with this. It's about using this for your overall health. You have the, what I call like the direct trainer approach, which is the anatomical sleuth. You can look at the body and really see what's going on. And then you have more of the sort of demonstrative, what I call like the intra trainer. Like, you still need to be creative, right? It can't be a physical therapy session. You still have to have creative exercises and a dynamic aspect to it to get people to enjoy it. And you sort of hit all of those areas. And I think that is really the golden ticket.
We've also, and I'll say, yeah, like the workouts, I don't want people to come in and think it's just like, it's not. Like, you push play, you get to select custom select your music stations, like it's a workout. But behind the scenes, we really care about your body, and we really care about how we're presenting that workout and what the foundation of that programming is. There's also a social piece, like coming in and saying the scale is not the number one measure of your health and wellness. In fact, it's actually harmful for a lot of people psychologically. Bringing sort of this kind of new shift in values is a big deal. And people come in and they like instantly are like, well, what's the diet and what's the plan? And I'm like, you don't have to worry about that here. So we actually also have live calls throughout the week. So Tyler does a couple live calls. We have another, we actually have a physical therapist who does another live call. So when people have questions about their body, they can get a live person to talk with them about what's going on. We have a WeShape podcast where we talk about a lot of these social and emotional and psychological things. And so we have a podcast discussion call every week where we can break down more specific topics and how they're impacting the greater whole and our community. And then we have community support calls where people just literally jump on a call and have one of our coaches and we just talk to each other. How are you doing?
A hard day. Yeah.
And so we find that this combination is really the full package for addressing the whole person. And we're noticing that people are having some pretty big transformations with this approach.
I talk about it all the time with my my clients, and then people I help young personal trainers sort of like advance in their career. I wrote a book called Fitness Business 101, What the Certifications Don't Teach You. And one of the most important things is the update phase, right? Katie comes to me and says, hey, I'm having a really bad day. I didn't sleep last night. I haven't eaten in 18 hours. And, I have a lot going on at work. It's like, well, I'm not going to give you the difficult workout that we had planned. I know you can do it. Physiologically, you can do it, but it's probably not best for you right now. Or maybe it is. Maybe I know you as a client and you do need to be pushed at this given time. But like understanding the person and putting a little bit more psychology behind it is important. And I don't think people put enough effort into that. Certainly, I haven't ran into any sort of app that's done that on any proper scale.
You said something there I want to touch on, though, Steve, and this is what's powerful, is that when we started building this and the concept of a phone being able to do a better job than most trainers, right, people kind of laugh at that concept, right? But in my head, I was just like, every trainer has a decision matrix. They have a system, a decision matrix that they're using to make decisions for the end user. And so it's just about coming up with a baseline decision matrix that we feel is really good, and then being willing to say, let me think about a different decision matrix, or let me get other professionals to weigh in on these decision matrices, and let's actually test the outcomes of those decision matrices to see which ideas rise to the top, right? So at the end of the day, we're trying to use that collective data as well as information from professionals like yourself, myself, other people out there who have way more experience than me in some of these particular areas to be able to identify the direction that we're going with the company. So I really view it as that idea meritocracy, like what rises to the top is what actually works for people. And I don't care if it's none of my ideas. I just want it to be the best outcome for the individual user.
Have you looked into how down the road, this is going to be a tough question here, how AI could potentially fuse with what you guys are doing? Have you dabbled in any of that yet? I can tell you that in the background, just for fun, like I have an AI program where I'm building like an AI personal trainer. I only feed it proper information and proper like videos and images and stuff from me, and then I can ask it questions and it'll answer. So I'm trying to basically build myself inside of an AI. Have you thought about how that can integrate into your business?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've been producing content for such a long time that one of the things I think will be really useful is for, you know, an AI model to be able to digest that content, ideally visually, right? And at the end of the day, you know, when I do these live coaching calls, it's really the same things over and over again. It's just simple deficiencies of movement that you constantly see over and over again, right? And it's about trying to give somebody the right corrective or the right movement that brings awareness to them of how they're doing it wrong. Because as you know, like you can show somebody something and then they just can't get it right or they forget about it or whatever, right? So in the long run, you know, I think this would be a really useful part of the product where they could ask their virtual trainer, like, hey, pause the workout, like this is hurting my shoulder. And the virtual trainer is able to like address that particular issue right there and help them understand what it is that they're doing wrong. Because another aspect of this too is you can even do the movement right in terms of like visually, but you might not have access to a muscle that's supposed to stabilize a part of your body, right? And so even though you're doing it right visually, if you're not properly firing the muscles, say around the shoulder blades or in the serratus or whatever to you know, bring your shoulder into the proper position, then you could look like you're doing it right, but still cause shoulder pain at the same time, right? So I think that's definitely a potential future. And then also with the selection of the particular movements as it relates to being able to test outcomes, I think there's a lot of opportunity there for machine learning and AI models to be able to do that math for us and start understanding, hey, when we move this here, when we move this there, it's getting a better outcome for the individual user. But I think the core of it is giving it information and then making sure that the people are saying, yes, this was better based on the guesses that this model was making versus you know, the model itself saying it was better or worse, right?
Also, I think that there is going to be an element of like, we're human beings and we are social creatures and we really do desire community. And so I can't really emphasize enough. I know that we have this incredible product and we're really adhering to the physical needs of people, but that's only half our product. The other half of our product is really rooted in a community of people who come together for a level of social change in the fitness space. So that is a huge pillar of what we're doing. And I don't know that we're really, I mean, you need to have human interaction with other people and support one another and have a community. So
I want to edify that real quick because we do these 30-day feel-good challenges that we do for our community for free, right? And almost everybody who we actually, you know, talk to after the challenge is like, I saw like a free, you know, feel-good challenge and I want to lose some weight, right? And so they like sign up for it. And then by the end of it, you have someone who's maybe 60-year-old and she says, you know, I signed up to lose some weight and I realized I've been neglecting myself for 60 years and I constantly serve everybody else other than myself. And when I do show up for my workouts, it's because I hate myself, not because I love myself. And for the first time in 60 years, I look at myself in the mirror and I can appreciate my body and I want to show up for my workouts from that place rather than the place of self-judgment. And like, that's the stuff that just like absolutely warms my heart. I've got 2 daughters. I don't want them to grow up in a world that's constantly telling them to judge themselves and making them feel bad because they don't look at this standard, like we said, that changes every 10 years, right? I want them to show up understanding that the most important thing if you want to live a happy life is show up for yourself, love yourself, and then you can actually spill that out onto others rather than doing out of pressure or guilt, right?
Yeah, well said. So do you avoid all of those metrics? Like if someone comes on and says like, "Hey, I want to know my body fat percentage," or like, "Hey, I want to know how many more reps I did here." Do you sort of hide that from them completely? Do they still record that on their own? How does that work?
So our product will tell them how many workouts they have been doing. But it's not like from the user experience, it's not like this huge number that pops up that we're focusing
like
on.
Gamified and get more. Yeah.
The metrics that we're really focusing on: are you sleeping good? Do you have good energy levels? Are you out of pain? And or is your self confidence improving? So when people come in, sometimes people come in and they say, "I'm here to lose weight," and I say, "That's fine." I think what we're really trying to offer is a safe, judgment-free space. So whatever journey people need to be on, we're just supportive of that. We don't really have a particular goal for them other than, can you connect with yourself a little bit more through our community so that you can better decide what you need versus what people say they think you need.
Yeah.
I mean, connection with self and tapping into those deeper parts of our being is what allows us to feel confident in our decision and our behaviors.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of are accepting of people who come in and they say, "I want to lose weight," or "I want to have we say maybe that will happen, but we have been through this thousands of times with thousands of people, and this is what we've learned. And so if you're interested, I like to ask people, like, what have you tried in the past? And it's usually the same thing in a different way. And then my follow-up question is, how did that work? And so, like, don't do it, maybe try a different way now. And so this is an opportunity, and usually within 30 days, then people go, "Oh, okay, I see what you're doing here." It takes a little bit of time. There's a heavy educational and self-awareness piece to our product, but usually people are pretty open once they've discovered they have been doing the same thing and not getting what they want for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decades.
I just want to elaborate on one thing. Why do people start a fitness program, right? Maybe a very rare amount of people, it's because their doctor told them they need to, otherwise they're going to, die early or something like that. But 99% of people, they start a fitness program because they want to feel happy, right? That's the ultimate outcome. They want to feel happy with themselves. And the reality is we've watched people lose 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 pounds and still hate themselves, right? And getting to the ideal body does not make you feel good about yourself. And the people who often get there hate themselves the most, right? That's what's fueling them at the end of the day. So what we're trying to do is flip that model on its head and say, regardless of where you're at right now, we're going to teach you to start appreciating little aspects of your body that you feel comfortable appreciating and letting that grow to the point where it doesn't matter what weight you are, it doesn't matter how your body feels. We want you to love and appreciate yourself. And if you can come from that place, you can show up for your workouts with this intrinsic motivation, right? I'm showing up for me because I deserve it. I'm worth it. Not because I feel shitty about myself and I want to look differently so I can receive love from other people outside of myself. And that has been a paradigm shift for most of the people in our community that we believe is not only going to affect them in the long term by giving them a sustainable program that can last a lifetime, but also we believe as a business, it's a better model than burn and churn and you're going to change this in 2 weeks and this and that. It doesn't work, right? Fitness is something that is so fleeting for most people and people chase fads. And we're trying to get out of the fad and get more into just, hey, show up for yourself as an act of self-care and start with, what do I appreciate about myself? And start building that self-love from there.
A perfect example of this is people who have lost a lot of weight in our previous company that we had. It's the same story every time. And the reality is, the truth is, if you can't have self-acceptance today and appreciation for who you are today, you will not cultivate that once you lose weight. So if we know that that's true, if we know that that's true, let's focus on the work around self-acceptance and self-appreciation and appreciation for your body today, because we know the other path, and that 1 + 1 does not equal 2 there. So it's really just shifting the intention, and we find that that's really having the biggest impact on people.
And I think for some people, it's, similar to an addiction, and they may never totally kick it, but they just have to keep it up front in consciousness, right? So like I have clients who I've worked with for 12 years, and, I remind them that the scale doesn't matter, but that's just part of who they are, right? They're always going to step on that scale. I can't stop them, and at some point, I can't force them to not step on that scale. And here and there, they will step on the scale, and they'll say, "Hey, Steve, I'm 2 pounds heavier than I would like to otherwise be." And then I have to remind them, "How do you feel? Like, why exactly are you working out? Do you know why we're doing this?" And then sort of like, take a step back and give them a more macro picture of everything. But I know that it's a fight that I'm not going to win necessarily. I know that this client is going to step on the scale for the rest of his or her life, and I just need to continue to work with them, and that we're not going to, absolve them of all of their issues. There's a lot of psychological things going on that are beyond my pay grade, if that makes sense, right? I only have 1 hour with this client, but I think it's still our duty to remind them, like you guys are saying, that there's more than just the scale. I'm not going to yell at my client. I'm not going to stop working with them. It's like an addiction, and I have to work alongside them.
It'd be interesting, Steve. I just had a thought, so I'm just going to share it. But like, if you printed out some stickers that said, you're amazing or you're beautiful, and you just gave that to somebody, say, let's just try something. You keep stepping on that scale, but I want you to stick this over the thing that tells you how much you weigh, and just have them look down at that. So let's try that for 30 days and see if that feels better for you or worse for you. I'll bet you anything, if you just take their existing habit and replace a little element of it that seems corny, you do that for 30 days, they're probably going to want to get rid of the scale. It's these small moments of repatterning that make a big difference when it comes to psychology.
Well, I think it starts, this is what we talk with a lot of our members about. So first of all, every day I have this little mantra that I say that I just like put out into the world. That's like, bring us people who are ready for WeShape, because I don't really want to convince people to go otherwise, go down our path if they don't want to. It's fine. There's no judgment at WeShape. But I do think that it makes a huge difference if people are willing to do what I call crack the door to curiosity, because when you are just even able to open that door a little bit and experiment with different things, there's a world of infinite possibility at your hands. So, I love to propose experiments to people. Are you available? Are you willing to try something? And if you are, can you just put your scale in the garage for a month and just see how you feel? So one of the first things I did when we started going down this path is I got rid of all the scales in our house. And it was incredible. Like, well, actually, it's a bummer because we have a very big dog, and I'm always curious how much she weighs, and we can never weigh her. But it's like, it was because I was willing to see what would happen if I tried that. So it's a willingness. It's a decision to crack the door to curiosity. And I remind people that's where all this starts. Yeah. That's the foundation. That's where this begins. So if you've tried the same thing in a different way for 2, 3, 4, 5 decades and it didn't work, the only thing that will make a change is your ability to be willing to crack the door to curiosity. And when you do that, you open in so much potential and so many opportunities to try something else.
And just like movement, right? How do you repattern movement? Repetition and awareness, right? How do you repattern psychology of self-hate? Repetition and awareness. It's the same thing, right? So at the end of the day, when we're doing the workouts, we're giving them a tool, but we try to give them tools like, when you walk by the mirror, first bring awareness to what you're thinking about yourself, because it's probably going to be a lousy thing that you're going to say. Now, if you heard your best friend say that out loud, what would you say to them, right? Yeah. And then don't jump straight into self-love, because that's probably bullshit for most people. They're not going to be able to go there. Maybe just appreciate something about you that you can genuinely appreciate. Like, hey, I woke up today and my body breathed for me all night long and my heart's still beating, And then start there and build that slowly, right? So again, it's all the same. It's just neuroplasticity. Most people think that they're where they are because of all this conscious choice, but most of it's repetitive patterns. So we're trying to step in and break the patterns as it relates to movement and as it relates to psychology.
Yeah, there's a big psychology component of awareness that you guys both already hinted on, and it's that some diets and exercise programs work according to the people, and then they fail, and then they work, and then they fail, and then they work, and then they fail. So they think, oh, I just have to continue to do this. I just have to go on it longer, right? Oh, so I did Orange Theory and keto for a month, and I lost 30 pounds, and I felt a little bit stronger. But then I stopped doing it for 3 months, and then I did it for a month, and I stopped doing it for 3 months. Now I just have to continue to do it. It's like, no, that's not. Your whole plan was wrong in the first place, right? And you can't stick with this. You can't adhere to this, and you're not learning enough about yourself, and you're just looking at, again, the gamifying numbers. And you're following restrictive diets that you can't necessarily adhere to. So ultimately, that's really the hard part, I think, for people in the health and fitness industry and trainers. And that's what you guys are saying, is that I know you think that you just need to do this thing harder or longer or more, but your whole perspective in the first place is just out of whack, and we have to kind of like retrain you as to what health is.
What people are saying, though, internally that they don't even realize is, I don't hate myself enough to be consistent. Right? If I only judged myself more, I would be more consistent, right? And it doesn't work, because you're coming from a place of lack. You're coming from a place of scarcity, of like self-hate. Are you going to ever continuously show up for yourself if the root of it is self-hatred? No. You're going to always abandon yourself because your identity is wrapped up in who you believe you are. If we can change that to that small amounts of appreciation awareness and start to build that over time, Now you show up for your workouts as an act of self-care rather than self-judgment. And my favorite way to think about this is people brush their teeth because they want their teeth to be clean, right? You don't brush your teeth because of self-judgment. How do you show up for your workouts in the same way? Like, I deserve this. I deserve to feel good. I deserve to, transform the way my body feels, So.
Well, you guys are doing amazing things. I will certainly download the app when it's out. I'm going to go check it out on the desktop and fool around with it a little bit. I appreciate all you guys are doing in the industry. Why don't you let my listeners know where they can find more about WeShape? And then maybe if they have questions for you guys specifically, Katie and Tyler, you can give your Instagrams or whatever else that you use on a regular basis.
Yeah, so we're on all social platforms. We have 2 social handles. At WeShape is all content related to movement patterns. At WeShape Podcast is all content related to sort of this social psychological change we're trying to evoke. And then we actually have a special link for your listeners. If they want to give our product a 2-week free trial, they can just go to WeShape.com/TrulyFit. And honestly, if you're in our product, Tyler and I each lead live calls and you get direct access to us. So giving the product a try for a couple weeks for free gives you that opportunity to actually connect. I lead the podcast discussion calls, and Tyler leads one of the movement Q&A calls. So that's where you can actually physically access us.
My guests today have been Katie and Tyler of WeShape. Thank you so much for joining the TrulyFit Podcast.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.